Many of you have watched me for years and remember some of the investigations I've done. And I want to bring you the latest on one that I've worked on since June of 2005. That's the year and the month that I arrived in Aruba, and because my hotel room was not ready, I went from the airport to the hotel where Natalee Holloway had been staying before she vanished about 10 days earlier. I knocked on the hotel door, expecting either no answer or perhaps a tourist who had moved into the room. I did not expect what happened. The door opened, and standing before me was Beth Holloway, the mother of the missing child. I instantly saw the pain in her eyes, and if you know any parent who has ever lost a child, you know that look. She invited me in, we talked, and the only way I could even begin to console her was to promise that I would stay in this investigation until the end, when we had all the facts. At the time of the promise, quite frankly, I thought that would be at most a few days. I had no idea it would be years and years. But I've kept my word, and I still am, almost 19 years later. As you probably know, last June, Sloot was brought to the United States after Beth and I pursued him for years. And then a few months later, in October, Sloot pleaded guilty to wire fraud and extortion, not to murder. He was not charged with murder. There is no doubt in my mind that Sloot killed Natalee Holloway, but he left out a whole lot of details in his plea, a much darker story about Aruba, but I'm going to leave that for a future date. In the meantime, there is a question of the FBI that needs to be answered, but the FBI doesn't want to answer the question. Here's the question. Why in Aruba in 2010, right after Sloot committed the extortion crime in front of the FBI, didn't they arrest him? When he was not arrested, Sloot slipped out of Peru from under the FBI noses and committed a second murder. 21-year-old Stephanie Flores. Here's the background of the sting in 2010 in the FBI. On Mother's Day, May 9th, 2010, John Q. Kelly, lawyer for Beth Holloway and an old friend of mine, arrived at the Queen Beatrix International Airport in Aruba. His role in the planned FBI sting operation. Prior to the sting operation, Sloot and Kelly had been exchanging emails. Sloot said the extortion, he would tell the mother of the then 5-year missing Natalee where she could find her remains, only if Beth Holloway paid him $250,000. Kelly notified the FBI, and the plans for the sting began. The FBI arrived days before Kelly. They had received permission from Aruban authorities to conduct this sting operation in their country. Hotel rooms were rented at the Marriott Hotel on the beach. One room was wired with cameras to catch Sloot in the act extorting Beth Holloway through her lawyer. In the next room, the FBI agents wore headsets watching the camera monitors and listening and recording everything. A rental car was likewise wired as Kelly, after giving Sloot a down payment on the $250,000 in the hotel room, would then be driving Sloot to the location where Sloot would be pointing out the fictitious spot where the mother of the girl who he brutally murdered could find the remains of her daughter. The hotel room and rental car sting, it went down flawlessly. Kelly did a perfect job, even getting Sloot to slowly count the down payment of that money so that Sloot remained on camera for a long time for a future jury to watch. With Joran taking the money from Kelly and the lie about the location of the remains, the crime was completed. Extortion, all caught on tape. Nothing more was needed other than an arrest, an indictment, and a trial. And a trial where the jurors need only view the tape. Meanwhile, back in the United States, on the phone all the time with Kelly, closely monitoring this, unbeknownst to the FBI, I was the one who originally gave Joran Kelly's email and phone number. I knew Sloot was evil. I knew he would do anything to get money, and I knew he would fall into this trap. Prior, Sloot claimed to me more than once that he was innocent of murdering Natalee Holloway. I never believed him. I also knew that a few years earlier, in 2007, the Aruban police and prosecutor had inexplicably closed the case. So in at least one email exchange with Sloot in 2010, when he was looking for money, I reminded him that there still remained a reward fund for information that could lead to finding Natalee's body. I told him that if he were innocent, as he claimed, and if he knew something about the burial site, he might consider trying to collect that reward. He asked how. I said I didn't know, but that he should contact Beth Holloway's lawyer, and he did. He then asked for, and I gave him information how to reach Kelly. On his own volition, no one forced him, he took the bait, and he contacted Kelly. Now back to the hotel room with the crime of extortion, now completed on tape with the FBI watching. You would think Sloot would be arrested. You would think that since the FBI had gotten permission from Aruban authorities to conduct the sting operation, that they made plans to arrest Van der Sloot should he commit the crime. And of course he did commit it, on tape, in front of them. The day after the sting, May 11th, the FBI put Kelly on a plane to return to the United States. But just as on May 10th, Van der Sloot was not arrested on May 11th, nor was he arrested on May 12th, not on May 13th, not May 14th, and as the days continued, there was no arrest. Meanwhile, Kelly, Beth Holloway, and I were on the phone daily, maybe more than once a day, trying to figure out what is the holdup. The crime had been committed right in front of the FBI, so why no arrest? The days continued to roll by, and the more they did without an arrest, the more annoyed we were all getting. During the passing days, Kelly would contact the special agent still in Aruba, but he'd get no answers. In my calls to Kelly, I got increasingly annoyed. I pointed out to Kelly, the crime was committed right in front of the FBI. The FBI sure arrested my clients on a whole lot less. As the days went on, and with Kelly's growing impatience at no arrest, no doubt aided by my own frustration, the FBI told Kelly, be patient, they were working on it. Most significantly, one of the agents told Kelly, who then told me, and I'll never forget this, that Kelly need not worry, since they had Van der Sloot under 24/7 surveillance. I remembered that because it was so important. I knew Van der Sloot was a killer. I knew he now had money, the down payment from Kelly, and that Van der Sloot, besides being evil, is very smart. The days continued to roll on with no arrest. May 15th, no arrest. May 16, May 17, May 18, May 19, May 20, May 21st. 11 days after the sting, still no arrest. An email from the special agent in Aruba to Kelly 11 days after the sting operation proves Kelly's frustration. The time on the email is 7:54 a.m. It's from an FBI agent to Kelly. It reads, quote, my BlackBerry lost voice comms yesterday, so I'm on my computer. The suggestion by the email is that he could not return a call to Kelly from Aruba to the United States. Well, that's absolutely absurd. There was a telephone in every single hotel room in that Marriott hotel. He didn't have to use his BlackBerry to call Kelly. There's more to the agent's email. He says that he is, quote, still putting the case together. Do you buy that? Still putting the case together 11 days later? Well, what did they have to put together? The crime was 100% caught on tape with the FBI watching in real time. And the FBI had permission from Aruba to do that sting. So why do I want to know what the FBI was doing for at least 11 days in Aruba, and maybe there were more, and that they never arrested Van der Sloot? Because a short time later, I found myself in the living room in Lima, Peru, with a sobbing and inconsolable father. Here's what happened. 4 days after the May 10th sting operation, on May 14th, Van der Sloot checked into Hotel TAC in Lima, Peru. He did so 4 days after the May 10th sting, while the FBI claims it was still collecting evidence of a completed crime, and while claiming Van der Sloot was under 24/7 surveillance. Well, he was 1,764 miles away on at least May 14th. So much for that 24/7 surveillance. No arrest was made. And then the unthinkable. Van der Sloot murdered again in Peru. Van der Sloot met 21-year-old Stephanie Flores in a casino, same type of location he met Natalee Holloway. From the casino, Van der Sloot took Stephanie back to his hotel room, and then on May 30th, the 5th year anniversary of his beating to death of Natalee Holloway, he beat Stephanie Flores to death. Reports out of Peru were that the autopsy of the young girl was so difficult to do because she was so badly beaten. That was after Van der Sloot, of course, killed again. I went on ABC's Good Morning America shortly thereafter and said the FBI had blood on its hands. I wanted to know then, and I want to know now, what was the FBI doing in Aruba on at least as late as May 21st, 11 days after the sting, and at least 7 days after Van der Sloot was long gone with the opportunity to kill again, and of course he did. At the time, ABC asked the FBI for a statement. This is what the FBI said, quote, the Birmingham investigation was not related in any way to the murder in Peru. Despite having been in motion for several weeks at the time of Ms. Flores' death, it was not sufficiently developed to bring charges prior to the time Van der Sloot left Aruba. The FBI's response continued. A case based on events outside the United States is a complex matter, and work was proceeding with all deliberate speed to prepare the evidence, the charges, and necessary procedures to obtain custody of Van der Sloot, end of quote. I'm sure you noticed in the statement, the FBI didn't mention that the crime was actually complete on May 10th, completed on tape. Nor did that statement point out they had gotten permission from Aruba to conduct the operation, so presumably they made arrangements to arrest Van der Sloot if he committed a crime, and indeed he did commit a crime right in front of them. But most significantly to me, the FBI in that statement didn't answer what were their agents doing between May 10th and May 14th when Joran was already in Peru preparing to kill again. Nor did they say what they were doing until at least May 21st, a week later. The best they can say is that it was a, quote, complex matter. Really? Complex matter? Do you buy that? It is so simple. This crime was so simple, it was caught on tape. What more evidence was there to gather after May 10th when they shut the cameras off? And consider this. When the government finally did indict Van der Sloot in Alabama much later for extortion, there was nothing in the indictment to suggest any evidence other than what was caught on tape on May 10th. So then, for 13 years, until last June, I worked with Natalee's mother to get Joran Van der Sloot to Alabama to face those extortion charges. Beth and I were finally able to accomplish this with the help of a Peruvian lobbyist. We got the president of Peru to sign an agreement to send Van der Sloot to Alabama. The FBI, they did not do this at all. Beth and I did. And after the president of Peru signed this, the FBI was boxed in. They had no choice but to go get him in Peru. I didn't think back in 2010 or last year in 2023 or even now that the FBI wanted Van der Sloot here in the United States because a trial on that extortion would necessarily expose their bungled sting operation back in 2010 when they let him get away. It would also no doubt require the FBI to explain what were they doing so long in Aruba, and Joran Van der Sloot's long gone. But as it turned out, the FBI dodged a bullet, at least for a short time. There would be no trial in USA since Van der Sloot pleaded guilty, and he was then swiftly returned to Peru to complete his sentence for that brutal murder of Stephanie Flores. In my opinion, he got a sweetheart plea deal here in the United States to button this one up fast without a trial. But I'll save my thoughts about that for later. In the meantime, we still have that unanswered question. We still don't know what the FBI was doing for all that time in Aruba, long after Joran left and killed again. If their extended stay was legitimate, even though botched, and not just something like sitting on the beach on taxpayer dime, just tell me. I'm not asking for much, but they won't tell me. So you all know me, not one to give up. And since now the extortion case is closed, and thus the FBI and DOJ can't claim it's an ongoing investigation, in February this year, I filed a Freedom of Information request. I believe my requested information, including the expense reports of the agents in Aruba, could shed light on what the FBI was doing after the crime was completed on May 10th to the 14th of May, when Joran checked into the hotel in Peru while supposedly under 24/7 surveillance, until May 21st, when the FBI was saying it had telephone problems. And curiously, since the crime was still over, they were still collecting evidence. So how did the Department of Justice and the FBI reply to my February FOIA request? Here's a picture of it. First note, the Department of Justice writes that the subject of my request is Joran Van der Sloot. Actually, I was inquiring about the FBI, not Joran Van der Sloot. I wanted to know what the FBI was doing in Aruba long after Joran had slipped out to kill a second girl. It's not about Van der Sloot. Second, the reason the DOJ and FBI declined my FOIA request is because the disclosure of law enforcement records concerning an individual could reasonably be expected to constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. They must be joking. An unwarranted invasion of personal privacy of Joran Van der Sloot? The killer's privacy? They were worried about that? And what would it be? Or if by some wild chance they're referring to the agents, although the subject said Joran Van der Sloot, how could, among other things, the FBI agents' expense accounts or how they spent taxpayer money in Aruba for at least 11 days be an invasion of their privacy? It's our taxpayer money. It's not their personal money. And besides the money spent, what were they doing in that full week after Joran slipped and was gone? How could that answer be privacy? And even if there were some names in the documents that I requested that they didn't want me to see, they could just black it out. They know how to do that. They redact items all the time in these FOIA requests. But instead, I just got a big no. I didn't even get redacted documents. So what do I think? Naturally, I'm suspicious. I'm suspicious of a cover-up. And if I'm wrong, and if this is totally on the up and up, the FBI can simply tell me instead of a big no on a FOIA request. But now I'm not the only one suspicious. On Friday, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, in the committee's oversight capacity of DOJ and the FBI, sent a letter to the Birmingham, Alabama FBI office. It reads in part, quote, on May 30th, 2010, Sloot murdered 21-year-old Stephanie Flores in a hotel room in Peru. He apparently checked into this hotel on May 14th while he allegedly was under FBI surveillance. We believe the Birmingham field office may possess documents that shed light on how the FBI missed the opportunity to apprehend Sloot in 2010, end quote. The House Judiciary gave the FBI Birmingham a deadline of 5 p.m. on April 19th to answer. And let me repeat, if this is all on the up and up, the FBI just needs to release the documents, explain what happened. Transparency is important.